I have worked with pregnant runners for over 10 years as a pelvic floor physio, and one thing that I have noticed is that runners tend to have tight pelvic floors, which can get in the way of having a vaginal birth because the pelvic floor muscles need to be flexible and stretchy in order to give birth vaginally. So in this video, I will share 3 of my best exercises for pregnant runners to do throughout their pregnancy if they're aiming for a vaginal delivery and want to make this process smoother. By the way, if you would like to get this exercise program for free, just comment "help" in the description below and we will send it to you so you can refer to it for your home practice. So the first exercise is the deep squat pelvic floor stretch. So this one is one of my go-to exercises to prepare for birth because it stretches the pelvic floor, but it's also a great hip and pelvis opener in preparation for labor. And I find that especially for runners, yes, their pelvic floor often needs more stretching than the general population because they tend to have more tension in this area, but they also tend to have very tight hips because of all the running they do and all the strengthening in this area that they're doing in comparison to the stretching they do. I have yet to find a runner who stretches enough for the amount of activation and strengthening they do. Maybe it's you, congratulations if that's your case, but it's not, I would say, the general rule for runners. So if you were not in the position already, you can get into the squat position with me, and your knees should be oriented kind of outward. And if your calves are too tight, which can happen again with runners, you are welcome to put a little bit of a prop under your heels just to elevate them. This way it's not as tight on your calves. You can also add 1 or 2 yoga blocks under your bum. So here, if I'm supporting my calves, I can put like the yoga block right on top of that towel, and that just helps me prop myself a little bit to not feel as much pressure in the abdomen and belly bump. You know, later in pregnancy, as your bump grows, being in the squat position can just be a lot of pressure. So there's nothing wrong with adding 1 or even 2 yoga blocks. If you don't need the calf support, you can just go with 2 yoga blocks. If you don't have any yoga blocks, just use books or whatever you have on hand. And this way it can really reduce the pressure here on the hips and on the bump. Again, the goal is to stretch the pelvic floor muscles right here around the vagina area. The goal is really not to have any discomfort in the back or hips, so use any prop you need to achieve this. Now, in this position, are you able to let go of your pelvic floor and let it drop? To do this, just pretend that you want to start peeing, without peeing, of course. And you should feel the pelvic floor muscles around the vagina and anus open and drop. I'll drop another video about learning to release your pelvic floor in the description below if you struggle with that part. So we're just gonna take 10 nice belly breaths here in this position, really focusing on our pelvic floor, letting go and releasing. Squatting is also one of the #1 labor positions I recommend in labor before the crowning stage because it helps opening the pelvis for your baby to move down, and it has gravity in its favor. So if you have not practiced deep squatting during your pregnancy, I can't guarantee that you'll be able to pop a squat in labor. So that's why we want to get some practice in here. And again, doing 10 breaths in this position, focusing on your pelvic floor, letting go. We don't want to be tightening, and doing that once a day, you know, even after your runs, I would recommend doing it if you're still running during pregnancy. And this is something that's easy to integrate in your daily life. I think, like if you're watching a show, for example, you can, you know, pop a squat during the show. If you're reading something, you could do it in the deep squat position. If you're a gardener, you could garden in the deep squat position. So try to find, you know, creative ways to integrate that squat in your daily life. This way it doesn't become this like okay, I need to do this every day. The second exercise is a figure 4 stretch for the piriformis. So you may have done this one before, where you stretch your glutes, but the difference here is that we want to bring the knee towards the opposite shoulder to get kind of a little bit of a rotation here, because I want to go get your piriformis muscle, which is part of your pelvic floor muscles, but is also a hip rotator and tends to be really tight in runners. So you can grab your knee here if you're able to. If not, you could also go with a belt or something to hold that knee. And the important part, like I said, is to bring that knee towards the other shoulder or the opposite shoulder. And you should feel the stretch in the buttock here. So we're going to hold that stretch for 10 breaths. I like to go with breath because when we say 30 to 60 seconds, people always tend to not stretch for the full amount of time. Whereas when we are counting breath, I find that people tend to hold the stretch for longer. Now we're gonna do it on the other side, and I want to demonstrate another way to do it if you're able to, depending on your bump size and how tight your muscle is for you. So if you're super tight, you may want to stick to the version on the back, and if not, you could just get into pigeon pose here. And like I said, the idea is really to kind of picture the knee going to the opposite shoulder. So you need to twist your body a little bit. And if you're not feeling it, sometimes it's because the foot here is too low, so you can add a bit more extension of your knee to get a bit more stretch. But that shouldn't be painful in any case. It should feel like a good stretch, a feel-good stretch. And again, we want to picture releasing the pelvic floor during this stretch. So letting go of the bladder can be a good cue, or there's other cues in my other video that I'll link in the description below if the idea of releasing your pelvic floor is completely new to you and this is something you need more help with. So again, 10 breaths here. The last exercise I recommend to pregnant runners is happy baby. Like any exercise in pregnancy, we want to listen to our body here, and if lying on your back triggers symptoms of dizziness, nausea, being short of breath, or it just doesn't feel right, then don't do it and focus on the other options in this video. So you can grab your big toes if you can, or your calves. So it doesn't really matter. Okay, so here I'm grabbing my big toes, but if I couldn't do that, I could just go here. And again, we want to focus on relaxing the pelvic floor in this position. So really letting go and opening the muscles around the vagina. Picture that you need to release your bladder. That can help unwinding a few more tensions. And 10 breaths in this position. If that feels better, there's nothing wrong too with letting go of the knees and just kind of bending your legs. I can still feel the stretch here in my pelvic floor, but some people feel it more with their legs open. So really like kind of tune in to your pelvic floor here and see what it needs. Now, I can 100% tell you that after this video is over, you will already have forgotten everything that I said. So make sure you comment help down below to get this program step by step so you can easily practice at home and after your runs. Or if you would like to download it now, there's a link in the description below as well. If you have learned something new today, make sure you give this video a like, and thanks so much for watching.